with all the discussion we have, for instance, about sports stadiums, I actually believe they're important, but the convention center dwarfs them in importance, not just for the city of Minneapolis, but frankly, more importantly, for the state of Minnesota. Spending on visitors in the city of Minneapolis is about $900 million a year. So if you sort of just do a back-of-the-napkin calculation on what that means for the state of Minnesota, that's about $60 million a year in sales taxes. The convention center itself brings in, we estimate, about $200 million a year, which would be, again, this back-of-the-napkin sort of calculation, about $15 million a year to the state of Minnesota. The city of Minneapolis supports that with taxes collected only in the city of Minneapolis. The state convention center is supported by the sales taxes solely in the city of Minneapolis. Those taxes are used to promote and grow events. Cutting off the sales taxes used in the city of Minneapolis to support the state convention center would be the equivalent of the state punching itself in the face.
If this didn't come up, I mean, we're about an hour into the hearing and no one's talked about the Vikings yet, unless that was in the first couple minutes. So,
Representative Lencewski, this bill and the Vikings are totally separate.
Well, okay.
Or I should say it like this. There's nowhere in my bill that has anything mentioned of the Minnesota Vikings.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to mention the Minnesota Vikings. Maybe the chair will say this isn't about the Vikings, and maybe you'll say it's not about the Vikings, Mr. Mayor. But I think the outside observer, that being me and the public, thinks there's some move here to sort of call out the city council members in Minneapolis.
Incompetence on the part of the legislature has led to, and the executive branch, has led to an overlapping series of structures that we fund one thing one way with one governing body, we fund another thing a different way in the metro area with a different governing body, different taxes funding different things, and we don't have a coherent strategy, largely because in the last 10 years when we've been doing a lot of this, we haven't had leadership from the executive branch that was willing to step up and take control and drive this.
There's no question that part of this issue is clouded by all the discussion about stadiums and all those other issues. But frankly, I'm very comfortable and willing to be part of a big open conversation where we put all this together and come up with a couple outcomes. One is we should not allow this state to become a second-class state that doesn't compete as the #1 convention place, and frankly also for sports facilities. We're #1. We're Minnesota. I don't think we should settle for second best. And as the #1 biggest city, we're happy to compete. But we do think this needs to be part of an open conversation about it. So I'm very happy you opened the discussion, and we look forward to further conversation.